All right, today we're reliving VTube history. This is about Seiyu, and let's go ahead and check it out.
About a month ago, I released a video where I took the knowledge gained from 4 years at media school
Wow,
and used it to break down the
4 years.
nightmarish PR strategy employed by Niji Sanji in their termination of Selen Tatsuki,
Wow.
aka Doki Bird. This was a corporate PR strategy so unethical, so incompetent, and so disastrous that the fallout from it breached containment and made it into mainstream news. However, at the time that I'm editing this video, the situation seems to have settled down. Following her termination, Doki Bird experienced a meteoric rise as a content creator and is currently thriving as an independent VTuber. And as for Niji Sanji, they've had other scandals to occupy the public's attention.
Oh my god! This is still in the works, guys. This is not ready.
They've been exposed. That being Any Color Incorporated's Niji Sanji, who recently has had an unsigned talent contract making its rounds, as originally reviewed exclusively by Florida Man lawyer Legal Mindset.
There are some places.
At least regarding the termination of Selen Tatsuki, it looks like this might just be the end of the entire saga. But that doesn't mean that this is all there is to it. A number of commenters in my last video mentioned that the whole situation bore several similarities to something that happened almost an entire year prior, that being Niji Sanji Ien's only other official termination, the termination of Zaion Lanza. Now, I'd only started watching VTubers in late August of 2023, so
Welcome.
I wasn't around to witness Zaion's termination, which took place in March of that year. But I was vaguely aware of two things. One, that Zaion had, to date, the shortest tenure of any talent at Niji En, and two, that after her termination, Seiyu Synchronicity, the talent behind Zaion Lanza, had gone on to release an explosive statement alleging numerous unethical work practices going on at Niji. Allegations that have had their validity all but confirmed by recent events. But there's something else about these two situations that doesn't seem right. One of the things that I remember seeing in the initial wave of responses to Selen's termination was that a number of people were quick to insist that Zaion did not deserve to have her experiences considered in the same way as Selen's. And so, my question is...
There's definitely no reason why they couldn't be comparable. They both work for the same company. They were both terminated under pretenses that, let's just say, aren't ethical. I don't see why you can't compare them. It's almost the same situation.
Why? Why are some people so resistant to the idea that Zaion...
Wait, hold on. What did that say? Let me read that.
Why are some people...
Stop saying that Selen's case is the same as Zaion. Selen is a victim. Zaion fucked up all herself. Well, to keep it real, both of them fucked up. And if Selen is a victim, then yeah, Zaion would be a victim too. So yeah.
People so resistant to the idea that Zaion
They don't like.
was
They don't.
also
Let's keep it a
victim
buck, bro. They don't like Zaion, bro. Let's just keep it a buck. They don't like Zion slash Seiyu.
of Niji's harmful work
Let's keep it a
environment.
buck, bro.
To answer that question, I'll be breaking down how Niji handled Zaion's termination in a 3-part analysis. 1. The lead-up to Zaion's termination. 2. The eerie similarities between Zaion's termination and Selen's almost a year later. And 3. The possible rationale behind Niji's approach to terminating their talents. Throughout this video, I'm going to be referring to the contents of One Girl's Story because it provides necessary additional context to the situation. context that was omitted from Zaion's termination notice and has yet to be provided by Niji or its representatives in any official capacity. More importantly, it allows us to piece together a complete story, a story that has repeated itself
Bro, okay, I've been gone for a bit. Did they ever, the Kodoka ever, did anything ever come to the Kodoka situation? Did anything happen with Alira? I saw Vox was streaming Tekken, so obviously he's all right. Hex is Hex. Like Evelyn. Y'all let me know if he dropping new music. That's all I
once
really care about from
already
him.
and may repeat itself
Okay, what happened to Meliko? I thought she was chill.
again. This is the story of Zaion Lanza, the devil of Niji Sanji Ien. Zaion Lanza debuted on the 10th of December 2022 as one of the original 6 members of Niji Ien's 7th generation, or wave as they call it, ex-Soleil. Alongside her were Kotoka Torihime, Maloko Kyoran, Hex Haywire, Vermilion, and Dobio Dropscythe.
The
Remember
coolest guy
these
in Niji
names because
Sanji
they'll
Ien.
be important later. Not even 3 weeks after her debut, Zaion would announce that she was going on a last-minute family trip starting from the 30th of December until the 10th of January. An odd move for a talent so soon into her career, especially since this meant that she had to cancel a New Year's countdown stream that she had previously promised her fans. And what's more, this was a lie. In actuality,
stealth
Zaion had
suspension.
been given a suspension by Niji and had allegedly been pressured by management into disguising this as a voluntary break in her public announcement. The reasons for this suspension were never publicly clarified, but in Sayu's document, she states that these included playing a Genmate's cover song on stream without prior authorization, playing games on stream using accounts that existed from her Vtubing career prior to joining Niji, and trying to directly contact a manager. Now, as unreasonable as some of these justifications are, what's even more unsettling is how Zaion's own words were used to hide her suspension from the public, instead of any official statement from management. When you're trying to get a feel for a corporation's communication strategy, taking note of who you don't hear from in their communications is just as important as taking note of who you do hear from. Exnomination is the practice of deliberately excluding someone's voice from a public discourse, usually to enhance the clarity of your message by silencing those who might disagree with you. However, that's not the only way exnomination can be used, because sometimes the voice you want to keep the public from hearing isn't someone else's, but rather your own. It's pretty hard to criticize the actions and intentions of a faceless entity, but it gets even harder when those actions and intentions are skinwalking beneath the words and faces of people you've come to trust. What Zaion's first suspension demonstrated was that, where possible, Niji's management will always avoid speaking up for themselves to the public, while simultaneously trying to hide their true intentions behind the words and faces of its talents. Remember this point, because we'll be coming back to this later. Upon returning, Zaion would do her best to continue streaming as usual, an endeavor that lasted until the 8th of February, when Niji announced that Zaion would be suspended indefinitely, citing compliance
Oh, I gotta see
issues.
this. Doppio and Bear statements. We're fast
Case,
forwarding.
this was less of a statement and more a vague reference to the situation, one where he thanked his audience for supporting him through tough times and expressed how saddened he felt at recent events, before requesting that he be allowed to focus on more positive things moving forward. Ver's statement, despite being more outwardly critical of Zaion, also appeared to project
Really?
a degree of goodwill. He prefaces his words by stating his respect for Zaion as a person and as a content creator, before reiterating that the termination was not the result of a single mistake, but multiple infractions. He then expresses personal disappointment with Zaion's actions while mentioning that himself and other members of X-Soleil had tried, unsuccessfully, to advise her in complying with Niji's rules. However, despite reiterating that he thought the termination was ultimately justified, Ver emphasizes that he had hoped for a different outcome and concludes by wishing Zaion luck in her future endeavors.
Look, I've always thought about it, but whenever I see Vermilion and he talks about anything related to Niji Sanji, it's like this guy legitimately just got a job and he was like, well, shit, since I'm here, I'm rocking with the company. Like that. And it's like, to me, Ver is the type of person I feel is only looking out for himself, which, no shade or anything. It just is what people do. People just look out for themselves usually. But it's apparent, especially if you go back and you listen to Ver Vermilion. Every time that I've watched a video of him talking about anything Niji Sanji related, especially like when he joined, he was like, "Oh, I didn't think I was going to join. I just sent it in, and then now I'm here." And I'm like, "Oh, I guess I'll just ride the wave, right?" It is what it is. But Bear, bro, he said, I'm very interested to like hear what his fans think about him. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what the Verminions, I don't know their name, right? What do you guys think about Ver whenever he's talking about stuff outside of just hee hee ha ha? Like if he ever talks about anything in the Niji Sanji politics, where are the adults at in the scene? I want to hear your guys' opinions and see what conversations you guys have to say about it.
And if that was all there was to X-Soleil's statements, then this section of the video wouldn't exist. But now we come to the statements made by Zaion's other genmates.
Yeah, what did
3
Meliko say?
individual live streams, each one taking place within an hour of its predecessor, and each one made for the sole purpose of addressing the termination. Earlier on, I mentioned how Niji's management has demonstrated a tendency to use their talents as a way of delivering their messages to the public and hiding their intentions from the public. We saw this during Selen's termination with a message from Niji Sanji En, which I covered in my last video. The TLDR of what I said is that Niji's management attempted to take potshots at Selen's character and Dokiba's counterstatement, under the guise of allowing 3 of their talents to air personal grievances they had with Selen. The thing that confused people the most, especially those with a communications background, is why Niji would choose to do this. If you look at it through the lens of a PR strategy,
It's like throwing a rock and hiding your hand. Obviously the CEO and the company are the ones that were behind the black screen video. But throwing the rock, which is these guys, people don't really got to think about the CEO. But of course, everybody thought about the CEO when it happens. We're not fucking dumb. But yeah, it worked in the past. That's why they probably thought it will work again. But you can only use the same tactic so many times before somebody with a brain catches on.
using talents to speak on behalf of management accomplishes little else besides tarnishing said talents with the mistakes of management, while also handicapping management by having non-professionals speak on their behalf. However, if you look at this approach,
Bro, that meme is hilarious, bro. Okay, black screen. Oh, curse you, Doki Bird.
speak on their behalf. However, If you look at this approach through the lens of a moral panic, then things start to make a bit more sense. If all you're looking to do is define a threat, then the bar for what counts as a trustworthy commentator is lowered significantly. Whereas a PR strategy
Rest in
might
peace, Steve
demand
Irwin.
professionals, experts, maybe even mainstream celebrities, a moral panic will settle just fine for victims. In media and communications, there's a term that's used to describe what can happen to a person who's put at the center of a moral panic. Their public image begins to morph and change, becoming progressively less and less human as the threat they pose is repeatedly
Bro,
emphasized until finally they emerge out the other side as a folk devil. A folk devil is a person or minority that gets turned into a symbol of a group's collective fears and anxieties. Folk devils are often conjured to fulfill two functions. On one hand, folk devils can
Gives
act
them a
as a
target.
fall guy for a larger problem, and by taking them down, you can create the illusion of
oh, we solved
solving
it.
said
Yeah, solved shit, man.
problem. On the other hand, folk devils can serve as examples to everyone else of how not to behave, with
Yeah.
their persecution
Don't be like that guy. You see what happened to that guy? Yeah,
acting as
I
a
got it.
warning of what can happen to those who step out of line. To show you what I mean, we're going to take a look at how these three statements combine to tell the public two things. One, how Zaion should be
Look how bad
perceived,
she is.
and two, how she
Don't be
should
like
be
her.
dealt with.
Yeah,
However,
yeah,
before we begin, I want to reiterate that my focus here isn't on the talents themselves,
Okay.
nor their individual responsibilities for the statements they made. Instead, my aim is to show how their words, regardless of truth or individual intentions, were used by Niji's management as a weapon to destroy Zaion's character while conveniently keeping themselves out of the picture.
Yep.
So, once
No
again,
one would think
please
about him.
don't harass anyone, especially those mentioned here. Of the three statements, Moloko Kyoran's is perhaps the most benign. She begins by expressing how devastated she is at Zaion's termination, before apologizing to both her own and, more importantly, to Zaion's audiences for the situation, acknowledging how some may feel shocked or hurt by recent events. Something I want to point out is that throughout the entire stream, Moloko sounds distraught. Despite the talents having no say in this decision, and despite her obvious emotional distress, Niji's management chose to have Moloko apologize to audiences not on their behalf, but in their place. Let that sink in for a moment.
Let that sink
Moloko,
in.
a talent, has essentially been left on her own to address any feelings of discontent that Zaion's remaining audience might harbor towards this termination. Although, thankfully, this didn't happen, had that audience been more inclined to vocalize that discontent in that moment, Moloko would have been the one bearing the
target.
brunt of it. It's also worth noting that, whether it was intended or not, her obvious emotional distress would have acted as a deterrent to criticisms of the termination decision, as even discontented audiences were likely to identify with her feelings of powerlessness, an effect which was probably amplified by her unnecessary apology. Now, on its own, Moloko's statement is fairly innocent, even tragic. A helpless talent trying to comfort her audience and who can't find any way of expressing the grief they share besides the words of an apology. However, the implications of this stream become a lot more pointed when you look at how it was contextualized by Kotoka Torahime's statement that came right before it. What makes the presentation of Kotoka's statement so insidious is how it attempts to shape public perception of Zaion under the pretext of implying an interpersonal conflict between her and her genmates.
Yeah, I remember it. I definitely remember her saying, "Oh, she didn't do like this. She didn't do like that. Da, 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 da. We tried to tell her. We tried to help her." Blah, 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 blah. And then X, or not X, Hex came out of Hex came out. Was like, "Yeah, she said some things that made me feel uncomfortable. That hurt my feelings. Blah blah blah. Wah wah wah. Blah 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 blah. Me me me." And then they just made her look like a piece of shit. Yep, that's what happened.
And to show you what I mean, we're going to go through 2 clips from Kotoka's stream. Here's the first one.
So first things first, about the termination, obviously. Honestly, what's said in the announcement is pretty simple and clear, I feel like. She broke the rules, a lot of the rules. And we, as the Exily member, really tried really hard. We tried really hard to discuss things over with her about her mistakes. We sometimes even fought with her for some things that she wished to be granted upon herself.
There. This one line shifts the tone of the statement by framing the interactions between Zaion and her genmates as a more combative, her versus us scenario. And just like that, the idea that the public should view this situation as a conflict
They should
between
make it seem
Zaion
like it's
and
her
her
fault.
former colleagues is no longer just implied. Neither is the idea that Zaion deserves no sympathy for the manner in which she was terminated. But what solidifies Zaion's role as Niji Sanji Ien's very own folk devil is what comes after this.
I might be, I might be like that filthy, stupid Yaru that slacks off on all the council works, and the Yaru that, is not good with both Japanese and English, just the girl that is not knowledge about a lot of the common things around here. But I do know when someone is disrespecting the ones I love. I may be new here, but some of you may hear me live for the first time, actually. But I'm proud to say that I love Niji Sanji. I love all the members that are here with me, here with us.
Us versus them.
I'm sad to see my gem mates having to apologize for this because, honestly, this wasn't their fault. And for all these reasons.
Tell us how you really feel, Kotoka.
Honestly, I don't know if I can say that I'm in the state to wish her good luck on her future ahead for now.
Damn. She said, fuck
Zaion,
her.
but maybe,
Damn.
maybe.
Bro, you can't even wish somebody good luck after they got fired. That means you really don't like her, bro. You really got some personal beef with her.
In the future.
This ain't no, this ain't just any like, yo, we were working together, we're co-workers, whatever. This is like some, I can't stand you, bitch. Like, this is the type of vibe I'm getting from this.
Sure, like maybe someday, like when our path intersect with each other, like I don't know if that's even possible because you came from the future, but
And now she joking on her. And now she laughing at her. I could just feel the drama building up. It's like, at the end of the day, this is just some toxic shit, honestly. What Kotoka doing right here is very messy. This is some high school girl shit. I personally don't like it, but it is what it is.
that's my personal intake about this.
There is a lot to unpack here. On the surface, Kotoka's statements about loving Niji and everyone in it might seem fairly innocuous, but it also paints a very specific picture of Niji's work environment. We are led to believe that said environment is one of mutual support and love. Conversely,
that's
this
not
also
true.
implies that Zaion was just an aberration, a deviant that threatened the integrity of this safe space and who was rightfully ejected as a result. This perception of Zaion as a liability to those around her is further amplified by the next section of Kotoka's address, where she states this.
Kotoka.
I'm sad to see my gym mates having to apologize for this because,
Kotoka.
honestly,
Kotoka.
this wasn't their fault.
At risk of stating the obvious, since the decision wasn't theirs to make, none of the talents had to apologize unless
Somebody car getting broken into.
they were told to do so by management. However, by excluding any mention of management's role in this termination decision, the statements made by these talents all serve to paint Zaion as the source of all the pain and emotional distress arising from the situation. By contrast, the remaining members of X-Soleil are framed as helpless victims, devastated by the aftermath of the termination, just as their audiences are. And when it comes to Niji-Sanji's manipulative use of talent victimhood, nowhere is it put on display more than it is in Hex Haywire's statement. During his stream, Hex reiterates many of the points made by his genmates. However, what separates this statement from the others is how Hex begins his address.
I do want to say first and foremost, as both a liver for Niji Sanji and someone who has suffered through essay sexual assaults as a young person, as a younger individual, I cannot condone a lot of the jokes and a lot of the things that she said, and it devastates me. It devastates me because I never would have guessed that it would come to this. It would happen this abruptly.
Now, to be clear, publicly sharing that you're a victim of SA or any other form of abuse is not itself a bad thing. But what complicates the way that Hex has done so here is how his victimhood is being used to qualify his condemnation of Zaion. Regardless of his intentions, this effectively frames Zaion's infractions as a personal slight against Hex and implies a degree of malice behind her words and actions.
He did it, my boy.
At best, you could argue that this was done with a neglectful ignorance of how Hex's words would be interpreted by some members of the Western audience as a license to attack Zaion. But at worst, this could be viewed as a deliberate attempt at mobilizing online audiences for a harassment campaign. Ultimately, it is this shared sense of disappointment and helplessness expressed by all three talents that viewers are being encouraged to identify with. It's also what Niji's management is relying on to give these talents the credibility to speak out about the situation despite them having no say in the termination decision and lacking any PR expertise of their own. Moral panics are especially destructive when they're used in the context of a publicized interpersonal dispute, because they have a tendency to turn perceived victimhood into a source of credibility. As a result, subsequent discussions around the subject of the moral panic tend to devolve into a victimhood contest that further obscures other, more systemic problems that might underlie the situation. And this is what makes Zaion's termination so fucked up, because at this point, Niji had succeeded in framing the whole situation as an interpersonal dispute between Zaion and the other talents instead of a labor dispute between Zaion and Niji. So when, almost 2 months later, Sayu would come forward with a personal statement detailing the harrowing experiences of what it was like to work at Niji. The weight of her experiences were mired in the controversy that Niji had created around her termination. Although it's never stated directly, one girl's story describes a textbook case of a toxic work environment, one characterized by managerial neglect, adversarial perms processes, a callous disregard for talent well-being and mental health, as well as preferential treatment of some talents over others. And the kicker? All of these issues were brought up again a
It's all true.
year later during Selen's termination by a combination of Dokibird herself and Niji Sanji's own statements. Niji doesn't want you to see the similarities between these two terminations.
They're very
In fact,
similar.
botching the execution of their strategy the second time round almost worked in their favor. After all, it's easy to get so caught up in the recent spectacle of Niji's failure to destroy one of their talents that you might not even realize that they've already succeeded at destroying one in the past. See, Sayu's synchronicity, she survived. Given enough time and in light of recent events, she might come to enjoy some measure of the success she deserves as a creator that managed to join one of the largest VTubing agencies of her time, regardless of how short her tenure was. However, for Zaion Lanza, it's a completely different story. Isolated, demonized, and silenced with cold precision, there was never going to be a future for Zaion, a fact that she could only have realized once it was already too late. Zaion was no saint, but she was a prophet, one that few listened to at the time on account of her being defined by her mistakes instead of her experiences. This is what it means to become a folk devil. When all is said and done, folk devils are just a symptom of a volatile environment, one where deep-rooted issues exist without readily apparent solutions, where the simple but illusory catharsis of condemning a scapegoat is prioritized over the more complex task of implementing effective reforms from the ground up. Niji
takes more
Sanji
effort.
Ien
They're not
has
doing that.
time and time again
They've already shown, like Niji Sanji themselves, they've already shown that they're incompetent. They take no responsibility. And if push comes to shove, they rather replace somebody than try and work with someone that they're having issues with to make a better product. You can see it in Niji Sanji JP. You can see it from Niji Sanji India. You can see it from Niji Sanji Korea. There's a track record. Ian isn't the first time this has happened. Seiyu is not the first person this has happened to with Niji Sanji. Doki Bird is just the straw that broke the camel's back. There's way more to this that meets the eye. But this is a great video, I'll say that much.
given the public reason to believe that it is one such environment. And in such an environment, where suspicions of favoritism, neglect, and petty conflict have become the norm in the eyes of the public, it only takes
Do you guys think Triple T is being neglected? Or do you guys think just Bright Shield and Kunai are? Because I think Claude's doing pretty well. I don't know.
petty conflict have become the
really
norm in the eyes of the public, it only takes a single mistake for someone to be turned into a pariah. It doesn't matter if you're a talent, a manager, or hell, even the CEO. If the culture you've fostered prioritizes scapegoats over solutions, then no one is safe. So to those who might aid in the creation of a folk devil, a word of warning. If anyone can be turned into a folk devil, then the next one could be you.
Dope video. Awesome video. Yeah, armchair expert. This is definitely a video. Um, it's definitely a video to make people think about, the history of Niji Sanji. Um, I don't really have much I can add besides Seiyu from, what I've seen. I've hung out in her streams and I'm a 4 month member sub. So I think she's doing good. The streams are fun. Everybody in the chat has a good time. So overall, um, I don't really got much to say besides that this was a good ass video. So yeah, thanks for it's not a history lesson, but this is a thanks for teaching me what a folk double is, even though I knew what it was. But it's definitely good to have this video to explain that yeah, anybody can definitely become a target working in any bad company or industry, and especially if you let this type of mindset fester in that type of community or work or whatever it is, anybody can be the next victim, anyone. So yeah, you guys that are still working at Niji Sanji, watch out. Hope you guys ride out your contracts and then you're let free, but till then, it is what it is. All right, I'll see you guys on the next one. You guys have a good one. Bye bye.